speaking to the hospital administrators and to their in arrears, and that explains sometimes why there is also there have been delays. But I believe as of now, you have received all the hospital reports that we have audited. They should have been tabled. So now we're up to date, not for all, but for the ones that submitted financial statements for audit. So
I just wanted to emphasize that Nairobi, where there's a delegation from Nairobi called Senator Tabitha Mutinda, and Narok, where there is the senator, the whip, has not submitted, so that he just takes note, because I think he might not take note. Very important.
Yeah, we in our examination of hospitals, we realize that the reports for 2021, 2022 are there. But 2022, 2023, they are waiting for your certificates. So most of them we haven't touched on 2022, 2023 because the certificates are not ready. So once you make them ready, then we will deal with that as well.
Chair, what I'll need to find out when I go back to the office is whether they have not been transmitted, because I have signed every certificate for every billing process and then the commitment to the committee.
Okay. We will ask the clerk to follow up. Could be maybe they have not been tabled. Okay, yeah. You can proceed.
Sorry.
Chair, maybe they were not tabled because the House is on recess, but they will make follow-up and confirm and report in the next meeting, in tomorrow's meeting.
Okay. So, any other issue?
Yes, thank you,
Now
Chair.
we are in this report.
Yes.
So ask matters related to the content of this report. Proceed.
Chair, when we actually started, we said that the Auditor General is normally very busy. And it's good that we also use this platform to raise the concerns that we've been having. My point is this. I was just consulting with Senator Lekina on the if the county owns the yeah, you've told me. But now I noticed that the county of Meru owns the Leopard Rock Hotel Lodge. I don't know if you're aware and if you've actually have any information as far as the audit report is concerned.
Honorable Chair, I was just consulting. I'll request my deputy to just respond to that, please.
Thank you very much, Auditor General, and through you. Yes, indeed, the Meru government owns the hotel through the corporation that was created. So there is a Meru Investment Authority Corporation, I don't have the name right, that actually owns the hotel. And we do audit the investment corporation. Yes, I submit.
Chair, maybe before we begin looking at this report which is being submitted by the auditor, I have a concern, and I just wanted to understand how you separate the two. The counties that you've listed here in paragraph 9, which is 19, sorry, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kajiado, Narok, Uasin Gishu, Taita. I'm just curious whether you carry out two different audits. You carry one audit for the executive, and you carry another audit for the municipality. In the case of Nairobi County is sort of like, is Nairobi City County, it's an elevated municipality. You know, how do you deal with us? Because I've never seen I've not seen an audit report from a municipality. I've only seen audit reports for the executive. Okay, so I'm a little bit sort of like confused when it comes to that. So if you can just clarify it, it might help me.
I think for correction,
Yeah.
we are dealing with the audited report for municipalities.
Yeah,
So they are there.
I
What
know
we
they are
don't
there.
have is the cities.
The city, right? The reason why I'm asking that is because in your paragraph 19, if my colleagues will let me just, I want to be clear. I don't know everything. It's good to learn. This is for the hospital. I'm talking about the municipality. Sorry, this is for the hospital. Or maybe can I put the question in just?
Sorry, Chair.
Can I shorten the question?
Yes, we are moving from paragraph to paragraph.
No, 19 is different. Sorry.
But we can also go to 6 and 7.
Let's go to 6 and 7.
So I have to keep flipping through my document.
Or maybe what we do, members, we just go page by page.
Yeah, okay. Let's do that. Let's do page by page. Yeah. I was trying to make it easier so you don't have to read everything. But for us to go back and forth, let's go the way the chair have suggested. Keep my question in mind in terms of the city, municipality, county, municipality, because I'm sure my people in Narok are confused. How do we audit? That's why they probably have not submitted. Or if they have submitted, you can share that with us.
Let's start with page 2. Any member who has an issue on page 2? Page 3?
Wait, what's that?
Page 4?
Wait.
Page 4, maybe auditor, this is where I had earlier on raised an issue. 4 extending to 5, the issue of non-submission of financial statements. I don't know. It has been answered, yes, but I think we had a problem with a number of counties. One of the key counties that has this problem is Nairobi, especially for funds. There were no financial statements submitted at all. So I don't know what your office is doing to ensure that these counties comply with the law.
Chair,
Yes.
a point of order.
Yes.
And I don't want to talk for the auditor. I think that was the issue that you raised, and it was also disturbing me. And the auditor was very categorical on this issue. She has given us a certificate, a proper opinion. I think what the committees of parliament have not been able to do, and this our committee has been very, very, should I say, kind, is that we have never evoked, or rather invoked, Section 62 of the PFM Act. Because Section 62 of the PFM Act is very clear on what we should do as a committee in terms of dealing with people who have got late submission of documents. So I think that if we were to take the opinion given by the auditor strictly as has been given, then we can be able to deal with that matter. Because otherwise there's no any other thing that the auditor can do.
So I think that matter will handle it internally in our reports. Page 5. No question for page 5. Page 6.
Actually, there's a question for page 4.
What is?
With your through your chair, perhaps
Yes.
you could also indicate the paragraph because I'm using a different
Yes.
document on pages.
Yeah, you are taking us.
Paragraph 8.
You indicate the paragraph that you're referencing. My paragraphs flow with your paragraphs, but my pages may not flow with your pages because I'm using the iPad.
Now, I'm focusing on the inaugural audit of municipalities, which is paragraph 8. Can you
Proceed.
There are two issues here. Sorry, Auditor, and maybe you can help us understand this, because you've indicated that there are 110 gazetted municipalities. But in the inaugural year of 2019-2020, you only managed to audit 46 of them. Is it that there is not sufficient information to the counties, to these municipalities, to this Council of Governors, that they have to keep financial statement for all the municipalities, that is causing you not to be able to audit all the 110 municipalities? Number two, going forward, when it comes to this, you've raised a concern on paragraph 9 on the increased number of adverse reports. I've also noticed that there are a few disclaimers, which means you are limited by scope of audit. What do you think is the challenge, and what can we do as a committee to be able to assist? Because I don't even think my county of Narok has submitted financial statements for the municipality to be audited. And maybe it's because of lack of information. What can we do to be able to now? And I think this is a proper way, Mr. Chairman, of ensuring proper financial prudence in counties, because you are not leaving any level. You're going. I'm sure soon you'll be auditing economic blocks once we legalize them, because they are just clubs of counties. So maybe can you help us understand those two? Because I really would want my county of Narok, and also all the other 46 counties of Kenya that has municipalities, to be able to submit them for audit, and we can interrogate them here in this committee.
Auditor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. To respond to the concerns of Honorable Senator Olekina, perhaps we need to go to my statements under paragraph 24 on the steps taken, or E, the section E of my submission. Paragraph 24, from paragraph 24, steps taken by the office to ensure that all entities are audited. And this is where we have been working very closely with the National Treasury, the Council of County Governors, and engaging directly with the county executives so that we get these financial statements for audit. Now, you will find that some of these municipalities may have been gazetted, but they have not been operationalized, that the executive is still running the affairs of that municipality as part of the county operations. Or sometimes you'll find that indeed the municipality is operationalized, but all decisions and transactions are being done at the county level. So those are some of the areas. And when we were having an informal discussion, I said we may need to look at the law or the regulations in when we establish or gazette a municipality or a town, the transition process and period. When do they completely separate? The same thing with the hospitals. Hospitals are now self-accounting, but I'm finding a lot of the operations are still being handled under the county executives. So perhaps this committee can look at transition period when they are established as self-accounting entities. So this would solve some of these issues. My directors in the regional offices have instructions to pursue the separation and to seek for these financial statements. And of course, this is an issue that I've been raising the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, indeed, to even prepare the templates and even issue maybe a timeline when these templates should be used by each municipality and each town. This can really be of assistance to the office.
Mr. Chairman, if the auditor can go to page 20 of her report. Paragraph.
We said we go page by page.
You said page by page, paragraph. God, what paragraph is this? It's an annex. It's the annexures. Appendix 1. Of interest to me is list number 92 and 93. And Auditor, I'm taking you back to your earlier statements where you said counties submit their information, and most of the time that information is not accurate. I've noted that my county of Narok has got 2 municipalities, but there's no date of establishment of these municipalities. Was it like an oversight, or is it that you could not be able to tell? Because if you look at 92 and 93, it says Kilgoris municipality, date of establishment, 0. Operational, none. So that means they don't exist. Because if you don't have a date of them being established, how can we be able to...
Honorable Chair, you'll notice even in the body, the Rakanithi, we have a problem.
Right.
For me to pronounce myself on the date, I have to get the Gazette notice. So that's what we are trying to get. On the ground, we are told it's a municipality, but I have to get the Gazette notice that established that municipality. And then I will pronounce the date from which now I will request that they submit financial statements.
Or maybe they're not gazetted.
We are trying to, I still have my team on the ground trying to trace that.
Okay.
Yeah. There are about 3 of them. I think the Rakanithi also, I have a problem with that.
So, page 6.
Chair, kindly, with your permission, even before we move to page 6 very quickly, the question Senator Lekina had raised, which is on paragraph 7, so that we just avoid going back and forth on the issue of the cities. Senator Lekina had raised on the issue of cities like Nairobi City, Mombasa City. If you could highlight on that, because I see you have some explanation according to your office.
You are confusing us, because what Senator Lekina had raised was on page 8, which we are yet to go to.
And there's a question Senator Lekina really emphasized and requested the Auditor General to kindly respond. And I've seen she has some response here so that we don't forget about it as far as the cities are concerned. On paragraph 7, Chair. How do you handle municipalities within the city? I see that the answer that comes out, according to the Auditor General, is that according to our office, but I want to maybe clarify this, is that all counties are the same, either be it a city or a non-city. They are all 47, because she puts it like the Nairobi and Mombasa cities are deemed to be Nairobi and Mombasa counties, as stipulated by Section 6 and 27 of the Urban Areas and Cities Act. So that's why I'm saying if we could, Yeah.
I think my understanding of that statement, and you can help us, is that there are some counties that have got municipalities, right, that are separate, but Nairobi
And
Mombasa are both counties entirely and cities at the same time.
Yeah.
So that is the explanation. And the auditing of the cities doesn't feature here. But that's what I'm getting.
But Mr. Chairman, now that my 2 colleagues have engaged on this, I think I remember my question properly. And the question was very simple. How do you treat Nairobi and Mombasa now that they are cities? I know the governor of Nairobi has been talking about establishing boroughs.
Yes.
Are you now going to be looking at auditing those boroughs? Is it like an act of the assembly to be able to do that? And then maybe to expand that question a little bit, is that, and maybe the question I'm asking might sound very weird, but are there municipalities in Nairobi now that it's a city?
Honorable Chair,
Before you respond, I think it's a borough, not borough. Yeah.
Honorable Chair, if you look at the report that I submit on Nairobi County and Nairobi and Mombasa, the actual heading of that report is the Auditor General's report on Nairobi City County and Mombasa City County. You will not find it in any other county. The others will be Kisumu County or Nyeri County, Narok County, Honorable Lekina. But for Nairobi, they are both city and counties in terms of, we don't have a board or a municipality. Now, If they do establish boroughs, we'll look at the law. Most likely it will come to you for maybe comments or guidance to the county assembly. And then we'll see whether they are coming in as self-accounting entities aligned to municipalities or towns, and they must now submit financial statements. Indeed, these entities are audit have to find out if they are established by a law. And this answers the question for Nairobi funds that the chair raised. Nairobi has only established one fund, the alcoholics one. We don't have any other funds that the county assembly has established, which I audit and which should come to you. But if they do, then it will be under my purview, and I will submit the financial statements.
So, honorable members, any question on page 6? If none, page 7. Page 7, paragraph 17. There is that table down there, Madam Auditor General, where you have indicated that we have 358 level 4 hospitals. But you managed to audit only 50. 50 for 2021-2022. And then the number increased to 195 in 2022-2023. Maybe you can tell us more about the deficit. Which are these counties?
Thank you, Chair. If you look at paragraph 18, I have indicated that a total of 193 or 54% of level 4 hospitals did not submit financial statements for 2021-2022, while 163 or 46% of level 4 did not submit for the 2022-2023. So these have not been audited. And this is now why we keep working with the Council of Governors and the county governments and my directors at the regional offices to ensure that we speak to these hospitals to submit these reports. I know that one of the challenges they're having is separating activities from the county executive to the hospital to be self-accounting. But, Honorable Chair, the county executives need to know that now the hospitals are self-accounting and they must separate. And I know one of the reasons could be the hospitals are also providing quite a bit of revenue for the counties, so it is easier to hold on to the hospital and report good revenues, but they forget that you must also give them funds for expenditure. So that transition that I was proposing, that when an entity is self-accounting, there must be a separation timeline. It should be maybe handled at the committee level, either as part of regulations or as part of amendment to the law. So we are still pursuing.
So maybe on this one, clerk, you can write to these counties and ask them that is important that the hospitals are audited by the Auditor General, and that not submitting financial statement is a violation of Section 164 of the PFM Act and also the Public Audit Act. So I think we need to trigger a letter to those affected counties. Page 8 is where Senator Olekina had raised an issue on paragraph 19. That is the 14 counties which have not submitted any financial statement so far on hospitals, including Nairobi, where Mutinda comes from, including Kakamega, where they have a big investment, almost a level 7 hospital. And Isiolo, Tana River, Mombasa, Kajiado, Narok. Maybe you can respond to Senator Ladama.
And Chair, on the same floor of the hospitals, and I like it the way you emphasize on Nairobi, because my emphasis, Madam Auditor, you realize we have one of the biggest hospitals. Case example, Mama Lucy, Pumwani Hospital, Bagadi, and these hospitals have been having quite a number of issues issues affecting Nairobians. I would also want to hear from you, what extra are you really doing as far as these city hospitals are concerned?
Chair, the issue that the auditor has raised on revenue generation by facilities like hospitals to the county is a very important one. The other side of it, which is a supply side, is that the hospitals also do face a lot of challenges with recurrent expenditure, because most of the times those expenditures are actually need-based expenditures that needs to be there. So that you find two types of hospitals: those that still must remit all their money back to the CRF so that they can be able to, get their money back, and others that have explored different structures to ensure that some money can be able to remain to be able to run these hospitals. So my question is, could you give us a comment on what you see as facilities improvement funds? Is it an effective fund in general, or specifically would it be an effective fund to ring-fence some of these resources for the running of the recurrent budgets in hospitals? And in your audit process, have you encountered counties that don't have this particular fund? Because, for instance, your comment that Nairobi has got only one fund, is it a possibility that Nairobi, for instance, that has got almost 164 hospitals, does not have FIF, the Facilities Improvement Fund? And if that is the case, then what becomes of the hospitals in those counties with regards to running their daily expenses, or rather their recurrent budgets? What would be the strength of FIF in your view?
Madam Auditor General.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable members, for the concerns and the questions. Indeed, there is a concern that we need to expedite the issue of Nairobi, especially, and of course, notwithstanding that we have other counties that we are still working with, and probably by end of this week or next week, I will know from my directors which hospitals they have spoken to, because I've asked them to visit these hospitals and speak with the chief officers health in every county. But as much as I don't like making promises, Honorable Chair, maybe I can also speed this up by doing a flash audit on the operations of the Nairobi hospitals, just high level, without going in depth, and the relationship with the Nairobi County. Because you realize there has been a bit of a history. Some of these hospitals were being managed previously for some time period by NMS. Now I think they should have been handed over. So I may think of, I'll look at my resources, doing just a quick high level exploratory or flash audit, just to see how are these hospitals operating, and then maybe give high level recommendations for this committee as a special audit. Maybe it can unlock, and even as you write to the governor of Nairobi, to allow the hospitals or to require the hospitals to prepare separate financial statements for audit. The reason I've been having a concern on this is even when I'm reporting pending bills at the county level, and some of these pending bills relate, for example, to medical commodities and drugs from the Kenya Medical Supplies Agency, it is difficult to attribute to each hospital, because if a hospital is self-accounting and they have received drugs or medical commodities and those drugs have not been paid for, then at the county executive level, we should have a listing of these pending bills related to this hospital or this medical facility, which now should be disclosed in the financial statements of the separate hospitals. So let me leave that at that, Honourable Chair. Please don't press me for timeline, because we're in the middle of 2024, but I will make sure I speak to my specialized team we just do a quick flash audit, high level, probably even a desktop review of documentation, and then we can give you a report It doesn't have to be the usual report through the. Yeah, we can agree on the modalities.
Senator Agenda.
Chair, I was just quickly, just a quick one.
Maybe as an issue related to what.
Yeah, related to this. Two, you've talked about NMS. The cutoff was clear because NMS operated pursuant to a concession by the county then, through the governor then, to cede certain control of certain functions, and perhaps so the cutoff is clear. With this regime, we have not had NMS. So that's a 2-year period that NMS is out. Number two, this desktop, this flash audit you're talking about, what time frame would that take? I know you didn't want that was a question I was going to ask, and it's important. And how many households are you looking at? I'm sure you already have that bird's eye view. We know that KNH is level 6, Paraceto, different audit system. Now these others, the 4, level 4 and 5, how many do we have? Do we have some that you've talked about? The streams, I was also concerned about the same things you've raised. Pending bills, lines, expenditure lines, what the county inputs into the feeds, because there are different feeds. Whether even when you audit the county, you have feeds that talk about income from hostels, whether they specify those hostels. Yeah, thanks.
Auditor General, proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to go back and forth with my documentation. Honorable Chair, let's discuss the timeline, because I don't have a single officer now who does not have an assignment. And as I said earlier, they all know the clients they need to deliver by a certain point in time. I will speak to my specialized audit department to see if they can spare 1 or 2 or 3 officers. So allow me to communicate later on this. We'll do a census of the hospitals, and we'll know how many we are talking about. I don't have the number off the top of my head currently. There was the issue of facilities improvement fund. I'm trying to check. Honorable Chair, I did submit to this committee a summary of the hospital's reports. I do not know whether you have been able to interrogate it for all the cross-cutting issues. And this was one of the issues we were raising.
We actually did.
Yes.
And that's why we have started the process.
Oh, good. My concern with I know it's still under discussion. My concern with the creation of the many funds we are creating, and especially in the health sector, is whether we have solved the prior challenges of previous funds. Because if we have not thought out what challenges there were, so that now we can agree that we want this particular fund to assist, then we may not solve the problems or the challenges. There has been a lot of debate on not just the facilities, but also the equipping and staffing some of these facilities. We have implemented construction projects of dispensaries, health facilities, and quite a number of them are just closed. Very beautiful premises I've seen. They don't have staff and they don't have anything else. It's just a nice branding that is there. So it would be important for us to ensure that even as these issues are brought to you, that we look at what challenges have we been having with funds, especially in the health sector. If we are talking of universal health access, have we thought out the delivery of universal health to all? We now have the 4 entities that were created by the Social Health Act. At what level are they working with the counties? Because it's the counties that will deliver universal health, because it is a devolved function. And that is where this committee can come in and look at the modalities, the regulations, and the law in terms of seamless integration between the health facilities at the county level and provision of healthcare to the citizens. So I would not want to comment about a fund that is still under at high-level discussions. Some have established, but you can see that they still bring their debate to the national level, especially when it comes to replacement of equipments and other maybe not medical supplies, but equipment that are supposed to be part and parcel of health provision. So this debate actually goes at a higher level. It's not a comment I can make and it becomes a panacea or a solution for what ails health. But if the hospitals are going to create this, then it means they must be putting in some money. And sooner or later, that fund must be self-revolving based on the revenues the hospital is collecting. But if the revenue is going elsewhere and then they are given a little by maybe if it's a county executive, then it may not be sustainable. Let me leave it at that.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, just on literally once 30 seconds. The question asked by Senator Eddie Gishero was advised by a situation where we found ourselves in this committee, whereby the county government of Kilifi has got an existing fund to run the hospitals. We know a few other counties do have that. But now we have this facility improvement fund, which has been passed by the National Parliament, that cuts across all the 47 counties. If you look at the person who has been given the responsibilities in that fund, it is the CCM Health, which brings in a conflict with the CCM Finance as per the PFM Act. So the question, I think, which is a bit confusing is, now for you, which fund are you going to be auditing? If you go to Mombasa County as an example, or let's say Kilifi County as an example, they have an existing fund. Do they dissolve that fund and then apply the terms of the new FIF fund, or do they continue implementing their fund as it was established about 6 or 7 years ago, or do they run both of them at the same time? You know, so that's and then how does it? What, according to you, is the neater way? Because you cannot really apply anything retrospectively. You know, you have to think about, you know, the future. So do you do away with it, or do you proceed?
Chair, this will depend on the duplications that may arise. Because if we have the FIF and we have a fund already established at the county, and they are providing the same services or handling the same issues, then there will be a clear case of duplication, which will be raised in the audit report, and then a recommendation can be given as and when the two funds find themselves running concurrently. But it's a discussion that can be had with the governor, because there must be pros and cons on why the county established, how has it been running, and when now they start running the other one, how do we ensure there's separation, and for how long can they run concurrently? So that is a decision that needs to be made once the FIF is up and running.
Members, page 9. Any question on page 9? Page 10. Page 11. Page 12.
Chair, I know you asked the members if they have an issue, but I would want to bring to your attention the performance audit reports that we have issued, that this committee can also take, maybe look at
Proceed.
affects. If you look at paragraph 26, I have indicated some performance audit reports on areas that touch on the mandate of this committee, that speak to hospitals, to funds, and to municipalities. You can see reports on provision of emergency medical services in one county, which are issued in 2023 as a pilot. Implementation of the Kenya Town Sustainable Water Supply and Sanitation Projects, which are issued in March 2023. Health-related report on provision of maternal neonatal health. Monitoring of artisanal mining, those are of interest at county level. Provision of sewerage in a major town, where we did a case study of Nairobi City. This was issued in 2018. And the one on conservation of heritage sites. So I am just requesting the committee, even as you look at the financial audits, you also look at some of these performance audits, because they can inform some of the issues that I'm raising in the financial audit reports. And these are the topics that we have identified, and that's why I was indicating that I do not have staff currently. Management of non-communicable diseases in Kenya. We'll do a case study of cancer. Management of solid waste in cities. Initially, now we have an additional city, so my team will have to go back to the drawing board and incorporate the new city. Provision of community health services and conservation and protection of riparian land. So these are reports that might be of interest to this committee once concluded and submitted.
In fact, on that issue of provision of community health services in Kenya, I don't know what you're doing about this, because we have an arrangement between county governments and the national government to support the community health promoters, where the national government is paying 50% stipend and the county is paying 50% stipend. That arrangement is creating a lot of problems in counties. As we are speaking now, most counties have not paid the stipend for 4 months, largely because of delays from the national government. Now, this particular money from the national government was approved by the Senate. But to date, you're having scenarios where CHPs have not been paid because of that delays by the national government and the county government. I don't know whether you have picked that as one of areas of concern in this performance audit.
Chair.
You want to write on that?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to make a comment.
Okay, please.
I think it's an important comment. The rider can ride on that other one afterwards. Senator Agenda can ride on that one. But for me, there is something that we explored here, Auditor, and I've been trying to explore because it was an important question that Senator Akina brought. We are trying to look at a way of actually being able to make your work easier. So we were pondering the issue of amending the PFM Act to make sure that we can probably have a rolling basis kind of delivery of reports, so that there is a consolidation at the end of the year. But during that conversation, a very eminent issue was raised on people who are collecting money on behalf of the counties. And I think the indication that we gave that the ultimate accountability framework that exists currently is on the Treasury is an important one, but actually it is actually wrong. Because Section 165 of the PFM Act, and you can guide me whether the language used there refers to the people who are collecting revenue for the people on behalf of county government. So I'm going to read it entirely, because if indeed it is true that it is of the same understanding, then I think that we must be able to work together with you to hold those receivers of money very accountable. So Section 165, Auditor of the PFM Act, talks about the annual reporting by receivers of revenue. And it says, at the end of each financial year, a receiver of revenue for county government shall, mark my word there, a receiver of revenue for a county government shall prepare account in respect of the revenue collected, received, and recovered by the receiver during that financial year. Section 165(2) says the account under Section 1 shall include a statement of receipts and disbursements in a form prescribed by the Accounting Standards Board from time to time, which is what you have been referring to in terms of the Public Accounting Standards Board, and a statement of arrears of revenue. 3, not later than 3 months, this is the part I was looking for, not later than 3 months after the end of the financial year, the receiver of revenue for the county government shall submit the accounts to the Auditor General and deliver a copy to the National Treasury, which is where we are focusing on, the Controller of Budget, County Treasury, and the Commission on Revenue Allocation. Not later than 2 months after the end of each financial year, a receiver of revenue for the county government shall submit to a county assembly a full report with respect to all waivers and variations of taxes, fees, or even charges granted by the receiver during that year. But I won't read all of it, but I want to just read the relevant part. Actually, these people are supposed to be able to give the Auditor General reports 3 months after the delivery of the financial year. So I think we wanted to amend what already exists. And I think that is just a misnomer that the Auditor General must be able to point out to and take note. I don't know whether it's the same language or you can help me see the understanding of that particular provision of law.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before the auditor responds to that, who is the receiver? Is it as per Section 157 of the PFM Act, receiver and collectors of county government revenue? So there is a receiver who is designated by the CCM Finance. Is that receiver the same as a collector? And Section 164 that my colleague, is it 164? 167? 165 that my colleague has read. Auditor, if I'm to take it word for word, it means that apart from the county treasurer, who is the head of the treasury, it means that you will be receiving then document directly from the receiver of the revenue, who has been designated by the county treasury. So, when you are responding to that query, look at 157 and 165. Those two.
Okay, maybe.
Thank you.
Very briefly on your point, Auditor General, if you could listen to me, you have set out 4 areas where you have said, which you've identified as relevant topics for audit. Now, one of the areas you've set out, Auditor, is the area of management of solid waste in cities. I presume or I know that all cities or all counties have companies that run water and sewage. Maybe you tell us, I'm sure there are other entities that have been contracted or that exist either as companies or as entities that manage some of these services, sewage services, and maybe that had escaped the audit net before. So that's an important point. Now, I think on CHPs it's quite straight. It's a shared responsibility. Though health is devolved under Schedule 4, there's a shared obligation on the part of CHPs under the framework that we have, the Social Health Act. Now, let me just ask another question. On riparian land, maybe you want to tell us whether there are also other entities that some counties have designated to deal with certain services and that collect revenue on behalf of counties and that have also escaped the audit net for a while. I do not know, and I'm just asking, because there are areas you've singled out. Are there any other areas, this is my question, where counties have used companies to render services and or collect revenue, and that in the course of your audit cycle you have discovered that this committee should take concerns about, because there are those outlier areas that counties cleverly are able to use as vehicles that are used to collect revenue and that would often escape your audit dragnet? Thank you.
Yeah. The auditor, you have so many matters now. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I actually did not want Senator Olekina to ask that question because I knew we'll get into a debate of definitions. But indeed, there is a difference between the collectors as procured by the counties as service providers and the receivers as designated as public officials who prepare receiver of revenue statements. And I do issue to the Senate the receiver of revenue statements for each receiver. The challenge has been, have the collectors been remitting the correct revenue to the receivers in the first place? So we want to extend that audit and see how can we follow up beyond that. So there is that difference. This one purely speaks to the designated receivers within an entity. The same way for national government, KRA is the designated receiver of revenue. And then we have other entities that receive like immigration and other ministries that have the other revenue streams. And we prepare different certificates for these revenue streams. The issues that I raised on the special audits or the performance audits, these are topical issues that we pick within the office. I normally have a long list that at the beginning of every financial year, the team from specialized audits give to me for approval based on scanning the environment. What are the topical issues that are being discussed by the citizens? What are the issues being discussed in Parliament and by other stakeholders? What are the issues being raised by the media? And we pick topics. So these are topics that we have picked for this year. Remember, a performance audit is a study. It's almost like a research, and it takes a bit of a while. You will not get a performance audit done in under 9 months or 8 months at most, because we go beyond the financial issues and we look at effectiveness, we look at efficiency, we look at economy and provision of services, we look at issues to do with equity, and we look at sustainability. So these are the issues that we have selected. And it is easier to start with cities so that I have a small team that will look at environmental issues concerning management of waste. And then now later we can cascade that based on the learning curve to the other entities. But that does not mean that we do not raise sometimes paragraphs on these matters in the financial statements. But it's going beyond and looking at it holistically and asking ourselves, is it providing the services as required a certain area, including the medical? I think that was it. Yes, Honourable Chair.
Okay.
Maybe just before, and I've just noted this also with our Secretariat. I'm wondering, Madam Auditor General, which PFM Act do you use? Do you use the 2012 or do you use the amended one? Because I've just realized here we don't have the amended one. Huh? You know, when they carry out these miscellaneous amendments, like the one I wrote about today in the dailies, do you use that? Because I don't want to mix issues here, because I would have another question to ask you. Because I mean, I'm just saying we have the 2012 here, but it's not the one that is in use by the Auditor General. Or do you use this one?
Honourable Chair, the anchor PFM law is the PFM 2012. And then any subsequent amendments becomes part of the criteria that we use to measure against performance. So all amendments are taken into consideration whenever they recur, because they are now the latest. So you have the PFM Act 2012, and then you look at the specific paragraphs or areas or sections of the law that have been amended, and they are the ones that are applicable at that point in time.
I think the question is, are you aware that we have old law with us?
And also, so you use...
How is she supposed to answer?
So you use the 2012 as amended, correct?
Yeah.
Because the reason I'm asking you that is, I know the law requires you to audit the consolidated fund, the county revenue fund, and this other one called what? The Equalization Fund. But what happens when we have a law in this country that calls for money to be paid directly to suppliers? Do you get to audit that when loans are taken? If you read the amendment number 6 of 2014 of the PFM Act, which amended, I believe, section 52, do you audit that? Maybe I can read for you the amendment in a second here.
As you read out, members just note that we are done with this report.
Yes.
We have gone to the last page. So any other issue you are raising is not in this report. But since the auditor is a very rare person to find,
we might ask the same.
You may ask questions.
So I'm just looking
at your questions.
Section 50. I don't know whether you audit, because back in 2014, March 26th of 2014, the PFM Act was amended and Section 50 was amended. I believe even, I think 50 and 52 actually. I believe in even the number one, what number are you? Number 344 ODM member does not even know this. So it says, Section 50 of the Principal Act is amended by deleting Section 7, where it gives the Cabinet Secretary powers to do the following: disperse directly to the supplier where the loans is raised for the purpose of financing goods and services provided by a supplier outside Kenya, or, in the case of an external loan or external government security, applied in part to pay at closing expenses associated with the borrowing, including but not limited to the fees, commissions, and expenses of lenders, financial arrangers, brokers, managers, book runners, fiscal agent, trustees, paying agent, exchange. Do you get to audit this? Because this is where we found ourselves, where we've taken a lot of loans and they are not audited by you.
That's an extra question.
It's an extra question.
Yeah.
And I actually, there was a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think the Honorable Member is asking whether we audit public debt. We do audit public debt, and you have seen our reports in the public domain. Indeed, they were quite prominent in the media, both socio and mainstream media.
That is not my question.
But no, let me go to your question now, because you asked, do we audit? Now, if you look at this amendment you're speaking to, the date of commencement is 2nd November 2023. So I expect that as we are auditing 23-24 financial year, this now becomes a criteria for audit. So my staff are looking at these issues and you'll be given reports on this.
So does that mean as from 20, because this is actually very clear, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to ask this question. Does that mean as from 2014 to 2023 November, there's no money that has been borrowed and paid directly to suppliers by the Cabinet Secretary of Treasury? Because you say the commencement is from November 23rd of 2023. I'm just asking out of curiosity.
Chair, I would have to look at the agreements for every borrowing or loan on what are the terms. Because you have some loans where the terms are that the people who are either providing a service or coming to either implement a program, the monies will be paid into their countries. So that will depend on a case-by-case basis. I know the issue that I've recently been raising, and that may open another Pandora's box, is once a project has been implemented, and this is a directive I've given my staff to pursue, what do we do with the assets that came on board? Are they being re-exported? If they're being re-exported, how are we accounting for that? Are they being utilized within the country? Then who is taking them on board? I'm just digressing. But as I said, it goes on a case-by-case basis. So I cannot say no, I cannot say yes, unless we go to the nitty-gritty of each of those agreements.
Another is also asking whether GNZs have read the report. It's a different question.
Neto Agenda, what have you eaten today?
GNZs don't read those reports.
And maybe let me just inform this committee that we are currently finalizing the plan for the special audit on public debt. So it will raise some of these issues, which are also part of the terms of reference that the senator is raising. So it's going to be a very comprehensive audit of public debt.
Yeah. So I think any member with an extra question? No. Yeah.
No, I think before you say no, Auditor, I'm not very convinced with your last statement when it comes to the issue of auditing revenue collectors. And I know my colleague read the issue of the receiver, but I think you alluded to the fact that since it is public money that they're collecting, then they'll need to be audited. Should I conclude by saying that, based on our discussion here, you're going to issue a memo or maybe a circular to counties and tell them that you will also be auditing the collectors, just to be able to ensure that whatever is being deposited in the county revenue fund is indeed what has been collected. And to a large extent also, counties are now also procuring debt collectors. So these debt collectors who are being procured by counties, how is the arrangement? Do you treat it the same way as envisioned by Section 109 of the PFM Act, Article 207 of the Constitution, where all the money is deposited and then the revenue collectors are paid? Or do you allow the revenue collectors who maybe expend out the money to pay lawyers, to do all these things, to gut out their expenses and then remit whatever they are collecting to the counties? And would you be able to audit that? Because there are so many loopholes when it comes to the issue of management of public, especially ONSOs and also public money, that if you don't think outside the box and try to look at all those places, then you will not be able to, you'll just be giving us figures, but I'm sure those people who are collecting and reporting will just be laughing and saying, it's just giving us what we know. You know, and then finally, and this is another area that I may want, and you know you and I always have these conversations in details. Finally, KRA collects revenue. Other agencies collects revenue. Counties collects revenue. Do all these figures match with proportion? Like, for instance, if you go to a county that has got tourism activities, there's a levy, which is a catering levy, that is a percentage of the occupancy or whatever the hotel sells. Do you audit that figure and then create a nexus with the revenue collected by the counties and also the revenue collected by KRA like VAT to see who is not telling the truth? I don't know whether you see how I'm trying to create a nexus between the three revenue sources. Because ultimately, if we were to be very clear and say, we have the catering levy, which is 2%, we have the VAT, which is 16%, and then we have a fee charged by a county for bed nights, we will then be able to be accurate when it comes to the issue of our revenue, on-source revenue collections. And we'll be able to close the loopholes that are created by these external collectors and the county governments being in colluding with each other.
Chair, I know we are about to finish, but there's a very important question that I wanted to ask. But before I ask, I think that on this issue of collectors, that was being very deliberate with Section 165, I think that auditor, we should be a tag team on this. And the reason why I say we should be a tag team on this, because I think that we need to actually sponsor a very serious amendment that is very prescriptive on this. Because if you leave it to the auditor on the pretext of you must audit all the public funds, then I can see service providers starting to bring excuses with regards even to IP laws, data protection laws on their sides, that then becomes prohibitive to audit. We saw this even in an unrelated issue during elections, when Smartmatic was being asked the data that you own for Kenya, why can't you be able to provide it? And then Smartmatic would be like, no, you cannot access it because you've got protected data that is not available to you as a country that affects other clients that we have that we might not be able to bring. So I think that there needs to be a very prescriptive law that even deals with those other underwriting issues that need to be done. But so that's a different conversation that we can all have, and it's very clear from my mind where I sit what we need to amend. But it's a tag team. We'll reach out to your office to see what we can be able to do. But my question, which has been a very emotive question for governors, especially if you think about public scrutiny, where social media is very strong, in the number of accounts that are run by counties in terms of service provision. You know, you find that so County X is doing the same number of services, but only running 10 accounts. County Y is running the same services and providing the same services for their counties, but has got 200 accounts. Can you comment on what is the efficient number of accounts that counties should run? And is it an issue that also emanates in your audit process in terms of just efficient way of being able to show Kenyans how much money are counties spending, but also are there potential for leakages in cases where counties are running multiple accounts for very specific services that they're providing for their people? Because this has been a very serious issue that is emanating on this in this committee, and we don't know that to excuse it. Would you advise the committee to be able to think about reducing the number of accounts as much as possible, where probably like the executive is giving, for instance, or some hospitals funding? Should there be an autonomous accounting account for it, or should it just be under CRF? So that's an issue that I think that needs to be cleared for us to be able to know how we face it.
Yeah, I'll allow Auditor General to respond to those two issues, and then I will ask my last question.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, for the comments, the concerns, and the questions. Honorable Chair, the one thing I would request this committee to pay attention to in the audit reports are the two sections of the audit report that don't directly relate to the audit opinion, because the committee sort of get embroiled in the audit opinion and issues affecting financial statements, and you miss out on critical issues that could be 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 pages on matters to do with the value for money, matters to do with the effectiveness and lawfulness in the use of resources, and matters to do with risk management, governance, and internal controls. And some of these issues, if they were addressed adequately, would sort out some of the issues that the members are raising. Because in there, you'll see the challenges I raise in terms of accountability and in terms of risk. Senator Olikina is talking about all the types of analysis we can do on data. And even analyzing revenue across the country would be a very good analysis, which we can work with even National Treasury and other stakeholders. If you look at some of the reports I issue on revenue collections or revenue funds, you will see the issues raised. And I think I also issued a consolidated report on the county revenue funds. You'll see the issues cutting across. And those are the issues I would wish this committee to look at in depth, so that you don't get lost in the nitty-gritties in the financial statements. How was the statement done? How was the what do we call it? The template prepared. But you look at what affects service delivery, what affects development. So I take that into advisement that we can do as many, it's like doing statistics. And you can, the term, you can go to town with statistics and actually be able to draw some inference based on maybe graphs or correlations on revenue. So that is something we can see. Does it add value? Does it give information for decision making? And we can work on that. But that would come in probably after the end of auditing. And then we consolidate, and then we run these graphs. And you'll see them even in the summary reports. We do quite a number of graphs that can be of assistance to you. Even looking at percentages, how much is Kenya Revenue collecting vis-a-vis other revenue agencies? Should we consolidate? Why is it that this year this agency collected 2 billion and this year it has gone to 1.6 billion with no explanation? Is it siphoning? Or has something happened in the economy, or that particular service, has it not been provided? So those kind of scenarios can be run. Yes, working together, very, very critical in terms of public scrutiny. Indeed, we are required to work together because the Constitution says I must audit and submit my report to Parliament, and you must consider and give recommendations. That is the part I am really emphasizing on, that once I do my report, the committees look at it, give their report, and Parliament now approves that report, and those are the key recommendations that may affect future, that could be interventions for improvements. Bank accounts, apart from the requests or the requirements by development partners when they issue funds for a separate bank account, I think we should minimize bank accounts. We should have 1 or 2 revenue accounts, their expenditure accounts. We don't need 300. First of all, you will lose track. You put money there. Sometimes you forget that there's money there, and then you come and in some of my reports, you'll see where there's reallocations from this account to another account, and it was set up for a fund, which now brings me to my biggest problem concerning counties, that the law gives counties a blank check on how many funds they can establish. So sooner than later, we'll have more funds in this country that are running operations of departments of counties. So you'll have a fund for agriculture, and you have the department for agriculture. You have a fund for gender, and you have a department for gender. Then you have duplication of funds at the national level, also at the county level. You've seen counties now have established bursaries, and they're giving bursaries to secondary schools, and I thought secondary schools education is under national government. So now you have a problem, and I'm very glad that we're having a national conversation now on affordable education and how to minimize all these bursaries. They are quite a number. So I cannot say that 2 are enough or 3 are enough. It will depend on the situation, but more than 10, it's too much. So 300 don't make sense to me, or even 200. And we have data on that, and I think in one of my summary reports I did issue. They do not need. Even reconciliations are never done. There's commingling of funds because a fund is set up for a specific purpose. When they run out of funds in a certain area, now they go and withdraw from that particular fund. So there's commingling, misallocations, reallocations, and even the financial statements. I end up querying most of those financial statements.
Just for clarity on this issue of bank accounts, because, Migori County, where I come from, I think you've got more than 200 bank accounts. And that's why I'm very keen on this bank accounts issue. In your audit process, do you audit all the bank accounts, or do you audit based on a mother presentation on the financial statements? I'm very, very keen on this. Do you actually require the auditing of all those bank accounts, or if it's a functional account whereby probably like is giving service to a major ticket, do you just look at the vote vis-a-vis the financial statement, or do you go to these bank accounts as well as a verification indices for them? Because it's a very critical part of why there could be siphoning or leakages of public funds. So the first part is answered well, that we don't need more than 10 bank accounts, in running services in the counties, which is something that we should follow in as a committee and narrow it down. And I hope that the chair, you can take note on this, because some governors were trying to justify why you must have more than 200 accounts for efficiency and effectiveness. But on the other side is the audit question. So as an auditor, do you actually delve into those accounts?
Thank you, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. There are specific audit procedures for bank and cash and bank audit or balances. So these take care of all those bank accounts. We look at reconciliations. We do third-party confirmations, sometimes on bank certificates. We look at the bank statements, and then we follow through on the expenditures from those accounts. And that's why you find I raise issues on commingling of funds, or the accounts not being utilized for the specific purpose. Or sometimes you'll find a dormant account in 1 year or for 2-3 years, and then suddenly it receives money. The money comes in and goes out. So we follow and we find, no, it was a vehicle to put aside. I think you also understand.
Are you trying to say a vehicle for eating?
But just on my last question, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me, you've raised two very important issues here. One issue is on the danger of leaving the law as it is to allow counties to set up funds. Do you then recommend to this committee that we should look into amending the law, the PFM Act? I think it's section 116, if I'm not wrong, on setting up funds, to limit the funds? So that's the first question. And then query number 2, we have had this discussion about the IFMIS system. We've had this discussion about the IB in terms of the payment system. Right now, the Senate passed a resolution that all counties must pay at minimum 1 billion by the end of the last financial year. What are your views in terms of trying to streamline and to reduce this issue of pending bills? Should we continue entertaining this discussion of having an end-to-end IFMIS system, which essentially makes it very difficult and denies the county treasury the luxury of changing at the last minute who gets paid? So such that if you input a transaction, that transaction will end up in the bank account of the supplier, and there's no way that anyone can interfere. The CEO of finance or the CEO of the other department is the only person who would be responsible in ensuring that that transaction, gets to an end. If your comments to that are to the affirmative, then do you then see as a way that the auditor will, maybe the audit process will be faster, then you can actually be able to access it, like on a quarterly basis, and then allow us now to come in and then introduce the new amendments, which I'm hoping that my colleague and I, or rather this committee, can bring in the amendments to ensure that the Auditor General begins the audit 1st of July after the end of the financial year.
Okay, I think you can keep that as I ask mine, and then we conclude. There is 2 issues which are really a problem to devolution in this country. The first issue is the issue of late disbursement of funds to counties, where sometimes the national government takes up to 4 or 5 months before funds are disbursed to the counties. And you know the implication of that. It creates pending bills, generates audit queries. We have seen so many audit queries related to that. Is this an area that you can consider prioritizing in terms of performance audit so that we really find out where the problem is? Because my understanding is that the Treasury makes a decision on exchequer releases based on the income they get. They decide that pay so and so, pay so and so, and they leave out so and so. But the Constitution is very clear that whatever is generated nationally, 15% of that should go to counties without undue delay. But there is someone sitting in Treasury and maybe ignoring what is supposed to go to counties and prioritizing other things. And in that process, you find that counties have had to suffer. Some have had to borrow expensively from banks to be able to pay salaries and other things. And that also encourages corruption in counties. So is it an area that you can consider doing a performance audit to find out what is this process at Treasury in terms of how do they receive their exchequer and how do they release their exchequer, so that we don't keep everyone in a waiting mood. The Senate, every year, we pass a disbursement schedule to counties with a specific amount that will go to each county and the dates. But then someone there in Treasury decides to ignore all that and decides to prioritize other matters. So I think that's an area that maybe, Madam Auditor General, you can tell us whether it's an area you are considering key in your performance audit. The second area is the processes at the Office of the Controller of Budget. We have governors coming to stay in this city, CEC Finance coming to stay in this, Chief Officer Finance coming to stay in this city just to chase their approvals. Approval of expenditure at the Controller of Budget. And now we are being told that the Controller of Budget has now decided to be doing the approval herself. She will go through massive files, going through it herself. And you find that now, money was delayed to come to counties. When the money has come, the counties want to spend, they cannot spend, because the Controller of Budget will take a week, a month to process the approvals. Is that an area that you are also considering to do a performance audit so that we get to know what happens at the Office of the Controller of Budget? Why is it that the Controller of Budget has now decided to do the approvals, go through every file herself? So, because those are two issues that I find impeding devolution in this country. And if you did a good performance audit, then as a Senate, we'll be able to act on your report, and that would improve the way our counties receive money and the way approvals of expenditure is done by the Controller of Budget. So maybe you can...
Let me ride on your question, Chair,
Okay.
very quickly. Thank you. As we are concluding,
Yes.
I've noted the concern that you've really raised in terms of delayed disbursement, and putting in mind as a finance committee, we ensure that we are very timely. Now, then this, Madam Auditor General, then results to commercial loans by the counties. Then further to that, there's the issue, of course, of the audit. What's your take as far as this issue of commercial loans are concerned to the counties? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I just want to ride very fast on the COB, because I think that I've seen in my county of Migori it being a major issue. and I want just to narrow it down to a specific element of it, because I don't want us to put the auditor in a question where that looks like there's that there's a tussle between the auditor and the office of the controller of budget, because the controller of budget under Article 228, I think Section 5 of that, or that's Article 5 of that, is required to authorize only finances to counties as authorized by law. But I think that the question that I wanted to strengthen there, auditor, is that they consider a budget, then there is a vote to it, and then there is procurement. Where I've observed the control of budget spending a lot of time, which then leads to a lot of delays, is in the consideration of procurement. So my specific question to this is, should the control of budget stop at the vote level and then approve, or should they extend to analysis of the procurement documentations? Or should the procurement documentations then remain a question of auditor at a time of audit? I think that's where I wanted to get clarity on in terms of the question that the chair asked with regards to the COB delays.
That's right. Right. Auditor Chair, Auditor General, just a point here. You asked a question on commercial loans, and you've talked about a cost-benefit audit, and whether, and I'm sure you make recommendations, whether, because these loans that counties take, one, there's no public participation, especially commercial loans. When you finally get your remittance from the exchequer, you are then repaying loans with interest. And that gap is not accounted for. What have you advised counties to avoid commercial loans? I know that there are late remittances from Treasury at times, and counties end up getting overdrafts to pay salaries. And I think there's been a recommendation, and all governors have spoken to this. But shouldn't guidelines be given to stop counties from taking commercial loans? Because it is not fair to service providers. In the end, there's a shortfall merely because so much money has been used to pay interest of loans that are taken without a clear process. It's not clear how they take those loans, how they repay them, and what agreements they have with commercial banks.
Auditor, you can respond to that, and then after your responses, we'll stop there. No more questions. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. Indeed, some of the comments and issues being raised would speak to the way forward for this committee to guide on how public resources should be managed or accounted for at the county level. So I take some of these comments as issues that this committee is discussing or debating, and in the final report we'll give a way forward or recommendations for improvements. I want to speak to pending bills, and I want to speak to the excuse, because I use it as an excuse. I say it's an excuse that pending bills arise because there's delayed disbursement. Honorable Chair, if pending bills arise because there's delayed disbursement, then when the counties get their full disbursement in a subsequent financial year, total disbursement, then they should be able to clear those pending bills. Straight and simple. There should be a correlation between the pending bills at the end of the financial year. If, for example, it's 200 million, and the outstanding exchequer releases from the National Treasury, which should be equal to 200 million. If that is not there, if pending bills are more than the outstanding exchequer releases, then you have a problem of fiscal indiscipline. And this brings to the issue of who determines who to pay and when to void. I think you've seen in my reports these days, I'm even giving the number of voids in the IB, and the amount of money and the dates that is happening. if the controller of budget, and I'll now speak about the controller of budget, has approved a payment to a certain supplier and it has gone through the process, why should it be voided at the time of payment? Are they going to present the same outstanding bill to the controller of budget again for payment, or how are they going to handle it? If the controller of budget has authorized for full payment and they do partial payment, how will they request for the partial payment? So there's fiscal indiscipline at the counties, and there's fiscal indiscipline at some of the national government entities with regard to pending bills. However, there are those pending bills that arise because the fourth quarter exchequer releases their budget cuts, or we are given a communication by Treasury, including the audit office, and that's why I have come to this Parliament time and again to say ring-fence the funding of the Auditor General, create a fund that when I'm expecting to pay, like 2024, I closed the year with a pending bill of 24 million and a few other extras, because the amount I was expecting for exchequer releases that was delayed and came in end of June was not adequate to clear all the pending bills, which means because I had not budgeted for pending bills in the first quarter, the same thing affecting other entities, and they're supposed to be a fast charge, and I try to adhere to the law, then it takes away my first quarter funds for audit services. So first, it's important that if you look at my county reports, you'll see a table these days on what was released in May, what was released in June, what was released in July, because we are receiving funding in July and we are backdating it to June as part of the expenditure process. But that funding that comes, if it comes in its entirety, counties get their full funding for the year. So they should not say they have pending bills that has been pending for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Because do you have any outstanding funding for counties for 2023, 22-23? We don't. Maybe we have to for 23-24. When we top up or we add up all the pending bills for all the counties, does it amount to the billions that are yet to be released for the last quarter? If it doesn't, then let's sort the problem from the source. Let's look at the root cause of the problems. Let's not allow people to say pending bills are a result of delayed exchequer releases, unless there's a direct correlation. Mine I can show, because I also receive funding from the exchequer, the direct correlation on my pending bills against what was not released as at end of June. So there are those issues specifically correlated, and there are those where it's pure fiscal indiscipline, people committing for projects and programs and recurrent expenditures beyond what is available. We are, of course, hoping that accrual accounting will help, because it means we can continue providing services and we don't rush at the end of the year and incur further expenditure and then we don't pay. We hope that will help accrual accounting so that we know the stock of pending bills. And Honorable Chair, pending bills now should be part of public debt. And I've communicated this to both the National Assembly and the CPA, the Honorable Kajwang's committee, that we have borrowed loans. You have talked about commercial loans, which you're concerned about. We have overdrafts. And now we are borrowing in kind. We have borrowed from our employees by deducting pensions and other statutory deductions and not paying. So we are borrowing from our employees because we are diverting those deductions for use for other operations. And now we are borrowing from the suppliers in kind. They provide us services, they provide us goods, we don't pay. So pending bills, in my next summary, I'll put it as part of public debt. And I think you saw in my last summary, I indicated that the public debt does not include the amount of pending bills. That was a forward notice. So let's look at the root cause of the issues, honorable members, to solve the issue of pending bills. We are still, even as we try to sort out the pending bills that have been in arrears for so long, we have not put in place measures to stop further incurrence. So we would have expected, if we have committees that are working on pending bills, or we are paying attention to these, that 2024 Nobody should have crossed the year with a pending bill. 2025, no entity should cross the year with a pending bill. So let's tighten the controls. And again, failure to pay is an offense in the Public Finance Management Act. So I will stop there. That issue, it doesn't need a special audit because I've issued a report on pending bills for all counties, and I've issued recommendations and my audit findings. I've issued a summary, and my predecessor also issued the same. So how many times are we going to keep addressing an issue instead of providing a solution? The issue of control of budget, Honorable Chair, and people have also come to me to ask what the control of budget. I will just refer you to Article 228, Article 5, that the controller shall not approve any withdrawal from a public fund unless satisfied that the withdrawal is authorized by law. Who are these determining her level of satisfaction? It is her to determine. If it means she takes every file because she sees gaps within the process, which now she will improve on, that is her purview, under her purview. So it is her level of satisfaction, not others to come in and say, don't look at this document, you're doing audit, you're encroaching. It is her to determine her internal operations. And I would wish you'd support her because she comes before me. She is the one who gives you the warning signals with her reports, which I have been saying committees must now discuss, the same way you're discussing the Auditor General's reports. Because she gives you prior warning on a quarterly basis. And then I come in at the end of the year and I confirm what she was saying all along, that indeed it's true, that we have a problem. So if you take her reports and start discussing them and demanding accountability or requiring explanation, then when the entities come to you as you are prosecuting the Auditor General's reports, you will remind them, we discussed this issue when the Controller of Budget issued her report. And if we work seamlessly, that way we might see improvements because they know that you will demand of that explanation at the end. The issue of guidelines and laws and amendment, yes, indeed, I am for amendment to the law that allows people to create funds left, right, and center. Maybe give a limit of how many funds or the amount of money or how many in a year, or that a fund should not duplicate the efforts of a department or another entity. And that will come from you, honorable members. You put in controls so that CEC finances don't wake up every day and decide we can use this money off the IFMIS or off the system by creating a fund, because that's what's happening. So, Honorable Chair, honorable members, that is under your purview to tighten those internal controls. And I've raised this even with the Public Accounts and Investment Committees in some of my submissions, that we need to control the proliferation of funds that are being created by counties because they're also being used for mischief. Thank you.
Did I hear your response on late submission, late disbursement of funds to by Treasury? Whether or not you are considering doing a performance audit in that process?
Chair, we will look at it internally and we'll see whether there is need or whether National Treasury's hands are also tied because they wait for KRA. You know, we'd have to start for how much is KRA collecting on a daily basis, what is the list of all the entities that have applied for disbursements. The law says that you have the disbursement schedule. Why is it not being adhered to? Is there any favoritism, or what are their criteria in determining to give this one 10% of what they requested for and this one 100%, or even reallocation, where now supplementary 1, supplementary 2, everybody else is being told reduce your budget so that another entity can get more. So those are areas that can be looked at, and then we'll see whether there is need for a performance audit, or it can be part of the governance audit report within the National Treasury's report. Commercial loans, I think I addressed that with together with the overdrafts, that counties are resorting to commercial loans to fill the gap of exchequer releases, but nobody is asking are counties improving on their own source revenue collection so that they stop relying on the exchequer? How much goes to, out of the total county budgets? If you're saying how much goes from the national government? And are we saying that the national government is the one that is running the counties through the shareable revenue? What have the counties done to ensure that they are sustainable? Because it means if the national government is not able to collect, and remember the national government is collecting from the entire country, which comprises of the same counties, if the national government is not able to sustain, especially when we're having economic downtimes, does it mean the counties collapse? Should we not all collectively cut back on our budgets and our expenditures and our operations until maybe the economy improves? Because everything relies on revenue collection. If you look at the budgets, and I hope, honourable members, you look at some of these budgets that counties prepare, they overextend themselves. Indeed, they start from the expenditure side, then they start filling in revenue. Even, I'm sorry to say, revenue that is not feasible. Though they feed in how much they'll expect from exchequer or national government as shareable revenue, then the balance is a figure that they balance and assume they will collect, which means they will never live to their budget. Then they commit those expenditures as if the funds are available. Remember, we are operating on cash basis. So it's not about the availability of the budget or the vote, it's about availability of the cash in time to provide this service. So that is where now the counties need to start paying attention to. Is the cash going to be available? And cash comes from revenue collection.
I think we will close, but maybe before you close, just closing comments by members. Briefly.
Thank you, Chair. For me, it's actually to really appreciate your office. Great support that you've always accorded this particular committee. And I believe the deliberations, the discussions we've been able to have also have opened up a lot. And moving forward, definitely we'll be able to look at the recommendations that you've also shared, your views. This engagement was very, very important because its goal is more of a win-win, and I believe we've been able to achieve a lot. Asante sana, and usipote sana pia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. I think just two things, Auditor. Thank you, of course, for honoring this meeting with Senate. The topic on public debt is very important. And pending bills, and I'm glad that you have addressed it as required, pending bills, I think, need to be dealt with, and so that we get closure. Because one, as long as counties have a procurement plan and they know what they procure in the year, they would have a budget, and therefore there's no reason why in the end, if all funds are released as due, payment should not be made. But it gets worse usually, Auditor, when there's failure of payment, interest then accrues. Service providers go to court, there's interest. So where a county would have paid 1 million, they end up paying 3 times what they should have paid. And most of the problems, you talked about the control of budget, making approvals for payments. Eventually, a county then voids payment. I've been a victim, so I understand the process. Because you have the person called Approver 2. The Approver 2 changes, and money that was supposed to be paid to X is paid to Y. And the problem is that once the payment got to IB, some record will show that payment was due to the first payee, and there's a problem. So I think this must stop. There should be a way that once payments are intended for a service provider A, payment should be made to that service provider, not to B or C because of some monkey games that happen in the end. Thank you.
I think I want to echo, the sentiments of my two colleagues who have spoken just before me by thanking you so much for availing your time. I remember when we met just before the meeting, you were really pressed of time, and I think it's very generous of you to having sat up to past 2 p.m. to be able to explore some of this issue that we are dealing with in the committee. So I want to thank you together with your team for that time, and also for the resourcefulness that you brought to us as a committee. But I think that I want to really emphasize on the issue you have brought. I think it's a brilliant concept that we must now start considering pending bills as part of debt, to the extent that it should be a fast charge to counties. And I don't know that you're aware, but my good friend and leader in the House, Senator Damo Lekina, had actually brought a motion in the House that had passed that wants to ensure that counties do deal with the issue of pending bills for once and for all. Because the same way you have put the question that, the exchequer releases must be able to correspond to pending bills, is also the same way pending bills must also be able to correspond with the economic well-being of the counties. Because most of the times, if a supplier did, tender for any service in the county, they were approved by the county, and they were given the job to do. It should go without saying that they must get paid. Because then otherwise these suppliers are finding themselves in a whirlwind whereby, most of the projects are stalling, their own businesses are collapsing, their own loans, leave alone the loans in the counties that I know Senator Agenda is caring about, the interests that the counties have to face